My name is Regina, and I'm 62 years old. I've been a widow for 10 years now, teaching elementary school until retirement last spring. When my only son Daniel called to invite me for a family weekend, I was overjoyed. Finally, some quality time with him, my daughter-in-law, and my two precious grandchildren. I packed my car with homemade cookies and special gifts, then drove 3 hours from Springfield to Chicago, my heart full of anticipation. But when I arrived, the house was eerily quiet. No happy greetings, just 3 dogs, 2 cats, and a handwritten note. If you're watching this video right now, please let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next part of this story about how I dealt with this family trap. Life after retirement had fallen into a comfortable routine. 3 days a week, I volunteered teaching English to immigrant children at our community center. Every Thursday, I attended my book club, where we discussed everything from classic literature to the latest bestsellers. My health was good, though. Arthritis occasionally flared up in my knees on rainy days. My small garden kept me busy in the warmer months, but evenings could be lonely. After my husband Robert passed away from a heart attack 10 years ago, our modest 3-bedroom house in Springfield often felt too large, too empty. The silence sometimes became overwhelming, especially during holidays or family birthdays. I'd find myself talking to Robert's photo on the mantel, telling him about my day, or asking what he thought about the latest political scandal. My relationship with Daniel had always been complicated. When he was young, we were incredibly close. He was my shadow, following me around the house, helping me bake cookies on Sunday afternoons, asking endless questions about how the world worked. Robert would take him fishing or to baseball games, but Daniel always seemed to prefer my company. We would read together every night before bed until he was 12. Things changed when he hit high school. Suddenly, I became embarrassing. My attempts at conversation were met with one-word answers. The loving boy who once couldn't wait to tell me about his day became a stranger who barely made eye contact at dinner. I told myself it was normal teenage behavior. I remembered going through a similar phase with my own mother. College took him further away, not just physically, but emotionally. He'd call occasionally, usually when he needed money for books or rent. After graduation, he moved to Chicago for a job at a marketing firm, met Melissa, and settled into adult life. They married 7 years ago and gave me 2 beautiful grandchildren, Emma and Jason, now 7 and 4. I tried my best to maintain our connection. I called once a week, careful not to be intrusive. I sent birthday and Christmas gifts cards for every holiday. I visited only when explicitly invited, which wasn't often. During those rare visits, I tried to make myself useful, cooking meals and helping with the children while trying not to offer unsolicited advice or comments about their parenting. I walked on eggshells, desperate not to overstep boundaries I wasn't entirely sure existed. That Wednesday evening when my phone rang and I saw Daniel's name on the screen, my heart leapt. He rarely called me first. "Mom, we'd like to invite you over for the weekend," he said, his voice unusually warm. "The whole family will be home, and the kids really want to see their grandma." I nearly dropped the phone in surprise. "This weekend?" "Of course, honey. I'd love to come." "Great. Can you be here Friday around noon? We'll have lunch ready." "I'll be there," I promised already, mentally planning what to pack. After we hung up, I danced around my living room feeling like a schoolgirl. A whole weekend with my family, I immediately started planning. I would bake chocolate chip cookies, Emma's favorite, and the peanut butter ones that Jason loved. I would bring them each a small gift too, nothing extravagant, just something to show I'd been thinking of them. For Emma, I found a beautiful illustrated book about a girl who becomes an astronaut. She had mentioned wanting to go to space during my last visit. For Jason, I bought a stuffed dinosaur since dinosaurs were his latest obsession, according to Daniel's Facebook posts. For Melissa, I selected a lovely scarf in her favorite shade of blue, and for Daniel, I had something special. For years, I'd kept Robert's watch tucked away in my jewelry box. It was a vintage Omega my husband had inherited from his own father. Daniel had always admired it, even as a boy. Robert had planned to give it to him on his 30th birthday, but he passed away before that day came. Somehow the timing never felt right afterward. But now, with this unexpected family reunion, it seemed perfect. I spent Thursday cleaning my house, doing laundry, and packing my overnight bag. I baked the cookies carefully, arranging them in tins. I wrapped the gifts with bright paper and curled ribbons. I polished Robert's watch until it gleamed, then placed it in its original box, with a note expressing how proud his father would have been of the man he'd become. Friday morning, I woke before my alarm. The anticipation made sleep impossible. I showered, dressed in a flattering blue blouse Daniel once complimented, applied light makeup, and styled my silver hair. I wanted to look my best for my grandchildren. The drive from Springfield to Chicago normally took about 3 hours, but I gave myself extra time for potential traffic. The weather was perfect, clear blue skies with just a few puffy clouds. I listened to oldies radio, singing along to Beatles songs, feeling younger than I had in years. I stopped once for gas and coffee, checking my appearance in the rearview mirror before continuing north. Chicago's suburbs appeared on the horizon, and my excitement grew. I navigated through increasingly affluent neighborhoods until I reached Oakbrook Estates, where Daniel and Melissa had purchased their Tudor-style home 2 years ago. The neighborhood screamed success with its manicured lawns, luxury vehicles in driveways, and tasteful seasonal decorations. Their house was impressive, 4 bedrooms with a 2-car garage and a backyard large enough for a playset. The property taxes alone must have been astronomical. I pulled into their driveway behind Melissa's white SUV, gathered my bags of gifts and treats, and approached the front door with a smile stretching across my face. I rang the doorbell, expecting the patter of little feet running to greet me, followed by excited cries of, "Grandma!" when no one answered. After a minute, I rang again. Still nothing. I peered through the side window and saw lights on inside. Strange. Melissa's car was here, so they must be home. I remembered that Daniel had given me a spare key for emergencies years ago. I'd never used it before, respecting their privacy. But after a third unanswered ring, I dug through my purse to find the key attached to a small Chicago keychain. Taking a deep breath, I inserted it into the lock and opened the door. The moment I stepped inside, chaos erupted. A large gray husky bounded toward me, followed by a panting pug and a fluffy golden retriever. 2 cats, one enormous orange Maine Coon and one sleek spotted Bengal, observed the commotion from their perches on the staircase. The dogs barked excitedly, circling my legs and sniffing my bags. "Hello there," I said carefully, setting down my things to pat the energetic canines. "Where is everyone? Daniel, Melissa, kids?" No human voices answered my calls. I made my way through the entryway into the kitchen, the animal parade following close behind. The house was immaculate as always. Melissa was meticulous about cleanliness, but eerily quiet, except for the animals. On the kitchen counter, propped against a fruit bowl, was a folded piece of paper with "Mom" written on the outside in Daniel's handwriting. My stomach tightened as I opened it. "Mom, thanks for coming. Please take care of our pets while we're away. Detailed care instructions on the next page. Love you, Daniel." I flipped to the second page and found a typed single-spaced list that continued onto a third page. Feeding schedules, medication times, walking routes, play requirements, sleeping arrangements, and grooming needs for each animal. The husky Atlas needed 2 long walks daily and would destroy furniture if not properly exercised. The pug Otis required special breathing treatments twice daily for his respiratory issues. The Golden Daisy was on a strict diet for her sensitive stomach. The Maine Coon Butterscotch would only eat if his food was placed on an elevated surface. The Bengal Mia needed interactive play, or she would climb the curtains. My hands trembled as I set the papers down. This wasn't a family weekend. This was a pet sitting assignment. I sank into a kitchen chair, the dog still circling and sniffing me curiously. My phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. Though I rarely use social media, I had accounts to keep up with Daniel's family. The notification was from Melissa's account. I tapped it open and felt my heart drop into my stomach. The photo showed my son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren beaming in front of a gorgeous beachfront resort. Palm trees swayed in the background, and everyone wore sunglasses and vacation clothes. The location tag read, "Sunset Paradise Resort, Key West, Florida." The caption hit me like a physical blow. Finally free. First family vacation without pets holding us back. Thanks to the best mother-in-law for the help. Hashtag family vacation. Hashtag paradise. Hashtag kids need beach. Hashtag pet-free weekend. The timestamp showed it had been posted just 30 minutes ago. While I was driving the final stretch to their house, they were already lounging by the ocean celebrating their escape. I scrolled through the comments and saw Melissa had responded to someone. Yes, Regina is such a lifesaver. She loves animals and needed something to keep her busy anyway. Needed something to keep me busy, as if I was some bored old woman with nothing better to do than tend to their menagerie while they enjoyed the sunshine. I set my phone down and took a deep breath, trying to process the situation. Now that I was paying attention, I noticed other signs of their hasty departure. A suitcase receipt from last week sat in the recycling bin. The refrigerator was stocked with pre-packaged pet food and treats, all carefully labeled with dates. A pet store receipt for over $300 was magnetized to the fridge. The date showed they'd prepared for this trip days ago. This was no last-minute getaway. This was a calculated plan to use me as free pet care. My phone buzzed again, a text from Daniel. Mom, hope you found everything okay. Atlas can be a handful, but he settles down eventually. We'll be back Monday afternoon. Thanks so much for doing this. The kids are having a blast already. I typed several angry responses, deleting each one before sending. Finally, I wrote back, I'm here, the pets and I are getting acquainted. His response came quickly. Great, you're the best. Sorry for the short notice, but we really needed this break. Short notice. There had been no notice at all, just a deceptive invitation. I called his number, needing to hear his voice to understand how he could have done this to me. The call went straight to voicemail. A minute later, another text arrived. Sorry, Mom, reception is spotty here. Can't talk now. I know you'll understand. It's just 3 days. Thanks so much. I looked around at the 5 animals watching me expectantly. Atlas the husky dropped a tennis ball at my feet. Otis the pug wheezed concerningly. Butterscotch the Maine Coon meowed loudly from atop the refrigerator. Understanding dawned slowly, painfully. I hadn't been invited for a family weekend. I had been summoned for free pet sitting services, while my family enjoyed a luxurious vacation without me. That first night in Daniel's house was one of the longest of my life. I felt like an intruder, a servant, definitely not a welcome family member. I unpacked my overnight bag in the guest room, placing Robert's watch on the nightstand, unsure if I even wanted to give it to Daniel anymore. The pets at least seemed happy to have company. Atlas, the energetic husky, followed me everywhere, his tennis ball always at the ready. Otis the pug curled up beside me whenever I sat down, his labored breathing oddly comforting in the quiet house. Daisy the golden retriever was gentle and sweet, resting her head on my lap while I watched television. The cats were more reserved, observing me from a distance, as cats often do. As I administered Otis's breathing treatment, a complex procedure involving a small mask and a specialized inhaler, I thought about all the times Daniel had used me over the years. There were the frequent calls during college, always when he needed money. Mom, the financial aid office made a mistake, and I need $500 for books. Or, my roommate bailed on rent this month. Can you help just this once? I always sent the money, even when it meant dipping into my own limited savings. After graduation, the financial requests became less frequent, but were replaced by other forms of assistance. When he and Melissa bought their first condo, I spent 2 weeks helping them paint and decorate. When Emma was born, I stayed for a month cooking, cleaning, and caring for the baby while they slept. I did it all willingly, happy to be needed, desperate to remain connected to my only child. But phone calls from Daniel came almost exclusively when he needed something. Conversations were brief and centered around his life, his needs, his family. He rarely asked about me, about my life post-retirement, about my health or happiness. My relationship with Melissa had always been strained beneath the veneer of politeness. She came from wealth, and though she never said it directly, I sensed she found my middle-class sensibilities quaint, at best embarrassing at worst. She'd rearrange gifts I brought as if their presentation wasn't quite up to her standards. She'd improve recipes I'd been making for decades. She'd make comments about my clothes being practical or classic in a tone that clearly meant outdated. When I'd last visited 6 months ago, she'd remarked to her mother on the phone, "Yes, Daniel's mom is here helping with the kids. It's good for them to spend time with older people. It gives them perspective on aging." I was 62, not ancient, but in Melissa's world I was clearly past my expiration date. Now, as I followed the extensive care instructions for each animal, I realized I'd allowed myself to become nothing more than a useful resource. Need money? Call mom. Need childcare? Call mom. Need pet sitting? Call mom. I wasn't a person with my own life desires and feelings. I was a utility to be switched on when needed and ignored when not. The physical demands of caring for 5 animals quickly became apparent. Atlas needed long walks to burn his endless energy, but my arthritic knees protested after the first mile. Otis required his breathing treatments twice daily, a procedure that took nearly 30 minutes each time. Daisy had to eat in a separate room away from the others due to her dietary restrictions. Butterscotch would only eat from an elevated dish, and Mia the Bengal needed at least an hour of interactive play daily, or she'd destroy the curtains. By bedtime, my back ached, my knees throbbed, and a persistent headache had settled behind my eyes. I took 2 pain relievers and collapsed into the guest bed, only to be awakened at midnight by Atlas howling at something outside. At 3 a.m., Mia decided my face was the perfect place to perch. At 5 a.m., Otis's labored breathing became concerning enough that I administered an unscheduled treatment, terrified he might suffocate under my watch. Dawn found me exhausted, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of strong coffee, scrolling through more vacation photos Melissa had posted overnight. Day 1 in paradise. Kids love the pool, and mommy loves the swim-up bar, #deserved break, #finally adult time. Deserved break. From what exactly? Their jobs that allowed them a beachfront vacation. Their beautiful home in an exclusive neighborhood. Their healthy children and comfortable life. What about my break? When had anyone last considered that I might need or deserve one? I checked my phone again. No calls from Daniel. Just another text. Hope everything's going well. Kids built a sandcastle today. Wish you could see it. No apology for the deception. No acknowledgement of the imposition. Not even a genuine question about how I was managing with their small zoo of high-maintenance pets. I was just an elderly pet sitter, free labor, a convenience. As I prepared special meals for each animal according to the detailed instructions, my headache intensified. This wasn't how family treated each other. This wasn't love or respect. This was exploitation, plain and simple. Later that day, Melissa posted another photo. This one showed Daniel and the children splashing in crystal clear water with the caption, "Day 2, without responsibilities, should have done this ages ago." Without responsibilities. As if their pets weren't responsibilities. As if pawning those responsibilities off on me somehow erased them. As if a 62-year-old woman had nothing better to do than clean up after their animals while they sipped tropical drinks on the beach. For the first time since arriving, I allowed myself to cry. Not delicate tears, but deep body-shaking sobs that startled the animals. Atlas whined and pressed against my leg. Daisy rested her head on my knee. Even Butterscotch descended from his high perch to investigate my distress. "At least you 5 appreciate me," I said, wiping my eyes. "That's more than I can say for my son." I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Melissa's smug Instagram posts or remembered Daniel's casual text messages. No apologies, no recognition of the deception, just the assumption that I would comply, because that's what I always did. Around 3 a.m., after Mia woke me by knocking a lamp off the nightstand, I sat up in bed and really thought about my relationship with my son. Not the rosy version I told myself, but the reality. A pattern emerged clear and undeniable. I gave. He took. I reached out. He responded when convenient. I made him a priority. He made me an option. The words of my best friend Janet echoed in my mind. We'd had lunch last month, and I'd mentioned how rarely Daniel called. Regina, she'd said, fixing me with her no-nonsense gaze. You've never set boundaries with that boy. If you don't build fences, people will walk all over your yard. I'd dismissed her concern then, defending Daniel as being busy with work and family. Now surrounded by pets that weren't mine in a house I'd been tricked into visiting, Janet's words hit differently. By the time sunlight filtered through the guest room blinds, something had shifted inside me. The hurt and shock had hardened into determination. I was tired of being used, tired of being taken for granted, tired of being the convenient solution to everyone else's problems. I made coffee, fed the animals, and called Janet. "They did what?" she exclaimed after I explained the situation. "Oh, Regina, that's beyond inconsiderate. That's manipulative." "I know," I said, watching Atlas chase his tail in the backyard. "I'm thinking of just leaving. I could call a pet service and go home." "No, don't do that," Janet cautioned. "Those animals didn't do anything wrong, and a pet service might not follow all their special needs. Plus, that lets Daniel off the hook too easily." "What do you suggest then?" I asked. Janet chuckled, a sound that carried years of wisdom earned through 2 divorces and raising 3 children alone. "Don't get mad, get even." Not in a destructive way, but in a way that teaches a lesson about respect and consideration. The idea took root immediately. I wouldn't just be the compliant mother accepting whatever scraps of attention my son deigned to give me. I wouldn't abandon the innocent animals either. Instead, I would turn this situation into a teaching moment my son would never forget. Operation Boundaries. I said, already formulating a plan. "Janet, you're a genius. Just be careful not to damage anything," she warned. "You want to make a point, not create legal problems." After hanging up, I felt energized for the first time since arriving. I would still care for the pets excellently, they deserved nothing less. But I would also reclaim my dignity and self-respect in the process. First, I made a call to Daniel and Melissa's neighbor, Helen. We'd met at a neighborhood barbecue last summer, and she'd given me her number, in case you ever need anything while visiting. Helen was a spry 68-year-old widow who walked her Yorkie past Daniel's house every morning. "Regina, what a nice surprise," she answered. "Are you visiting the family?" "Well, that's a complicated question," I replied, before explaining the situation. Her gasp of indignation was validating. "Those young people have no respect. In my day, we would never treat our parents that way." "Helen, I was wondering if you might help me with something," I said, outlining my nascent plan. "Oh, honey, I would be delighted," she replied, adding her own suggestions that were even more creative than mine. "My grandson is a landscaper. He owes me a favor I could call in." By the time we finished our conversation, Operation Boundaries had expanded significantly, and I had a surprising ally in Helen. I sent Daniel a cheerful text. "Having a wonderful time with the fur babies. Don't worry about us. Enjoy your vacation." His reply came quickly. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." "No," I thought, putting down my phone. "I'm not the best in the sense you mean, a convenient, compliant doormat. But I'm about to become the best at something else entirely, establishing boundaries." I looked at the 5 animals watching me expectantly. "Who's ready to help Grandma Regina teach your humans an important lesson?" I asked. Atlas barked enthusiastically. I chose to take that as full approval of my plan. The transformation began immediately. While I would never damage property or neglect the animals, there was plenty I could do to make my presence felt long after I departed. I started in the living room, where Melissa's design aesthetic ruled supreme. Everything was placed with precision, neutral colors, minimalist decor, not a pillow out of position. I began by simply rearranging furniture, moving the couch to face a different wall, swapping end tables, repositioning lamps. Nothing was damaged, but the entire energy of the room shifted. Next came the photographs. Melissa had curated a wall of family photos, all professionally taken, everyone perfectly styled and posed. I carefully removed these from their frames and replaced them with photos I'd brought in my purse, old pictures of Daniel that Melissa had likely never seen. Daniel at 14 with terrible acne and braces. Daniel at 16 going through his chubby phase. Daniel at 18 with the unfortunate mullet he'd insisted was stylish. I returned the professional photos to their frames, but hung them in different locations throughout the house. The formal family portrait that once dominated the entryway now hung in the laundry room. The pets, meanwhile, were getting a taste of freedom. Normally, according to the instruction manual, they had strict rules. No pets on furniture, no pets in the master bedroom, no pets on beds. Those rules are suspended for the weekend, I informed them, patting the sofa beside me. Atlas needed no further invitation, leaping up and sprawling across my lap, despite weighing nearly 70 pounds. Otis and Daisy quickly followed while Butterscotch claimed the back of the couch as his new throne. Only Mia remained aloof, though I noticed her eyeing the forbidden territory with interest. That afternoon, with Helen's help, I went to the local pet store and purchased interactive toys for each animal, things that would engage them for hours. For Atlas, a puzzle feeder that required him to solve problems to get treats. For Otis, a special cooling mat to help his breathing. For Daisy, a snuffle mat that made mealtime more interesting. For the cats, an elaborate climbing tree that Helen's son helped us assemble in the corner of the living room right next to Melissa's prized reading chair. While at the store, I also bought ingredients for homemade pet treats. Back at the house, I spent hours baking special dog biscuits and cat treats, filling the house with strong, distinctive aromas that would linger in the curtains and upholstery long after I left. The pets approved enthusiastically, sitting attentively as I worked eagerly accepting samples. "These are much better than those fancy store-bought organic treats Melissa gives you, aren't they?" I asked, as Atlas devoured his third biscuit. His enthusiastic tail wagging seemed answer enough. Helen returned in the afternoon with her grandson Tyler, who owned a landscaping business. After hearing the situation, he offered to spruce up the front yard as a favor to his grandmother. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said, using my formal name despite my insistence on Regina. "My team and I can plant a beautiful flower garden along the front walkway. Nothing invasive, just colorful perennials that will brighten the place up. Daniel once mentioned that Melissa doesn't like messy flowers," I said, remembering my daughter-in-law's preference for sculptural plants over blooming varieties. "She prefers clean lines and modern design." Tyler and Helen exchanged knowing looks. "We'll make it tasteful but exuberant," he promised. While Tyler and his 2 employees transformed the front yard, Helen and I continued inside. She brought over several houseplants from her collection, extras that needed a good home, and we placed them strategically throughout the house. "Melissa mentioned once that plants are too high maintenance," I told Helen as we positioned a particularly large fern in the master bathroom. "These are nearly impossible to kill," Helen assured me. "Though they do shed little leaves constantly. Such a shame." By late afternoon, the house had undergone a subtle but undeniable transformation. Nothing was damaged, but nothing was the same. The sterile magazine Perfect Aesthetic had been replaced by something warmer lived in, and yes, slightly more chaotic. Each evening, I sent Daniel and Melissa carefully selected photos and updates. Pictures of the pets looking happy and well cared for, but never showing the changes to their home or the new behaviors I was inadvertently encouraging. When Daisy learned that jumping up beside me on the guest bed resulted in extra cuddles, I sent a photo of her sweet face, but cropped out the forbidden furniture. When Atlas discovered he could open the refrigerator door with his nose, a trick I hadn't exactly taught, but hadn't discouraged either, I kept that development to myself. On Sunday, I decided to complete the transformation with the pièce de résistance. I drove to a nearby furniture store and purchased an item Melissa would absolutely hate, a floral-patterned rocking chair, the kind my mother had owned, the kind Melissa had once referred to as so retirement home chic, with barely disguised disdain. With the help of the delivery service, the chair was placed in the most prominent position in the living room, angled perfectly to be the first thing visible when entering the house. I sat in it that evening, rocking gently Atlas at my feet, Butterscotch on the headrest, feeling an unfamiliar but welcome sense of satisfaction. "It's not about revenge," I explained to the attentive pets. "It's about respect. It's about recognizing that I'm a person with feelings, not a convenience to be used and forgotten." Atlas whined in what I chose to interpret as agreement, while Otis snored softly from his new favorite spot on the sofa. Monday morning, the final day before the family's return, I initiated the last phase of Operation Boundaries. I called 6 of my friends from my book club and gardening group, inviting them to an impromptu afternoon tea party at my son's lovely home. "Are you sure he won't mind?" asked Margaret, my 70-year-old gardening mentor. "Oh, he's always telling me to make myself at home," I replied, which wasn't technically a lie. Daniel had said those words, though I doubted this was what he meant. By 2 o'clock, my friends had arrived, each bringing something for our gathering. Margaret brought her famous lemon scones. Patricia brought cucumber sandwiches. Walter, the only man in our book club, brought a selection of fine teas. Janet, my co-conspirator from the beginning, brought a bottle of champagne for celebrating new beginnings. I had spent the morning baking and preparing traditional afternoon tea fare. Tiny sandwiches with crusts removed, scones with clotted cream and jam, small pastries and cookies arranged on Melissa's best china, the set she kept in a display cabinet and had once mentioned was too precious for everyday use. We set up in the formal dining room, using the table that Melissa had told me they only used for special occasions. The pets naturally were invited to join the festivities. I found festive bandanas for the dogs and elegant bow ties that attached to the cats' collars, transforming them into proper tea party attendees. "I've never been in such a lovely home," exclaimed Patricia, admiring the high ceilings and crown molding. "My son and his wife have done well for themselves." I agreed. "Though I think it could use a woman's touch, don't you? Something to make it feel more like a home than a furniture showroom." My friends murmured their agreement, several noting specific suggestions for warming up the space. Larry, a former professional photographer at 68, brought his camera and captured the tea party from every angle. The elegant spread on Melissa's best china, the animals in their party attire, the rearranged living room with my new rocking chair prominently featured, my friends and I raising our teacups in a toast. "To boundaries," Janet declared, and everyone echoed the sentiment, though not everyone fully understood its significance. As the afternoon progressed, Helen arrived with a surprise: her brother Frank, a retired mathematics professor from Northwestern University. At 65, Frank had the distinguished look of an academic with silver hair and intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. He was also, as I couldn't help noticing, quite handsome. "Hope you don't mind an extra guest," Helen said with a conspiratorial wink. "Frank just moved back to Chicago after years in Boston, and I thought he should meet some local people." Frank smiled warmly at me, taking my hand in a gentle handshake that lingered perhaps a moment longer than strictly necessary. "Helen has told me so much about you, Regina. All good things, I assure you." Something fluttered in my chest, a sensation I hadn't experienced in years. Frank took a seat beside me, and we discovered a mutual love of mystery novels, traditional jazz, and surprisingly competitive baking shows. "I can't bake to save my life," he confessed, "but watching others create those incredible confections is fascinating. The precision, the creativity, the math of it all appeals to me." "I make a decent apple pie," I offered. "Nothing competition-worthy, but my husband always said it was his favorite dessert." "I'd love to try it someday," Frank replied, his eyes crinkling warmly. The conversation flowed easily between us, even as the larger party continued around us. It felt as if we'd carved out a private space in the middle of the gathering, a bubble containing just the two of us. When my phone chimed with a text from Daniel, I was almost annoyed by the interruption. "Mom, we're catching an earlier flight. We'll be home tomorrow morning around 10. Thanks again for everything." I showed the message to Janet, who raised an eyebrow. "Perfect timing for Phase 3. I texted back, "Wonderful, sweetheart. I have a few surprises waiting for you." As the tea party wound down and my friends prepared to leave, Frank hesitated by the door. "I've enjoyed our conversation immensely, Regina. I wonder if you might be interested in dinner later this week. There's a wonderful little Italian place near Northwestern that I think you might enjoy." I felt a blush rising to my cheeks, something that hadn't happened in decades. "I'd like that very much, Frank." We exchanged phone numbers, and he promised to call the next day to make arrangements. As he left, he turned back with a smile. "Perhaps I could stop by tomorrow to meet this son of yours and see his reaction to your redecorating efforts." The suggestion was unexpected but appealing. That would be perfect. Shall we say 10:30? They should be home by then. After everyone had left, I surveyed the transformed house with satisfaction. The pets, tired from all the attention and excitement, lounged contentedly on furniture they had previously been banned from. Atlas had claimed a spot on the sectional sofa, Otis and Daisy shared a plush chair, and both cats had discovered that the top of the entertainment center offered an excellent view of the entire room. I texted Daniel one last photo, a close-up of Daisy's face, her expression particularly sweet with the caption, "We've bonded so well. Can't wait to see you all tomorrow." What I didn't mention was that Daisy was currently stretched out on the master bed, shedding golden fur all over the high thread count sheets. Tuesday morning dawned bright and clear. I woke early, excitement and anticipation making sleep impossible. Today was the day Daniel and his family would return, and I found myself looking forward to their arrival with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Not anger, not vindictiveness, but a calm certainty that a necessary correction was about to occur. I spent the morning making final preparations. I brewed a pot of coffee strong, the way I liked it, not the weak blend Melissa preferred. I set out mugs on the kitchen counter, including one I'd purchased yesterday that read, "World's Best Grandma When She's Setting Boundaries." Frank arrived at 10:15, bearing a bouquet of wildflowers and a warm smile. "For the architect of Operation Boundaries," he said, handing me the colorful arrangement. "You didn't have to do that," I protested, though I was pleased by the gesture. "I wanted to," he replied simply. "Besides, I wouldn't miss this for the world. Helen has kept me updated on the whole situation." I found a vase in the kitchen, Melissa's crystal one naturally, and arranged the flowers as the centerpiece on the dining table. Frank and I settled in the living room with coffee, me in my new rocking chair, him on the sectional with Atlas immediately claiming a spot beside him. "He likes you," I observed, as the husky rested his head on Frank's lap. "Dogs are excellent judges of character," Frank replied with a wink. At precisely 10:32, we heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the front window, I watched Daniel's SUV park behind my sedan. The family emerged looking tanned and tired from their vacation and early flight. Daniel helped Emma out of her booster seat while Melissa unbuckled Jason. They gathered their luggage from the trunk and approached the front door, completely unaware of the transformation that awaited them. I heard the key in the lock. Frank reached over and gave my hand a reassuring squeeze, then quickly released it as the door swung open. The family stopped dead in their tracks, frozen in the entryway. Daniel's mouth actually fell open as he took in the rearranged furniture, the new rocking chair, the cat tree beside Melissa's reading chair, and the animals lounging on previously forbidden surfaces. Melissa's face went from tired to shocked to horrified in the span of seconds. Emma and Jason, less attuned to the changes, simply called out "Grandma" and rushed to hug me. "Welcome home," I said cheerfully, embracing my grandchildren. "Did you have a nice vacation?" Daniel seemed unable to form words, his eyes darting around the transformed space. Melissa found her voice first, though it emerged as a strangled whisper. "What happened to our house?" I stood smoothing down my slacks. "Oh, I made a few small changes while you were gone. Made things a bit more comfortable." I gestured to Frank. "This is my friend Frank. He stopped by to meet you all and help with the animals before you got home." Frank stood and extended his hand to Daniel, who shook it automatically, still looking shell-shocked. "Your mother has told me so much about you," Frank said pleasantly. "You have a lovely home." Daniel finally managed to speak. "Mom, what did you do?" I smiled serenely. "I pet sat as requested. The animals have been wonderfully cared for. We've bonded tremendously." As if on cue, Atlas bounded over to Daniel, jumped up on his hind legs, and placed his front paws on Daniel's chest, a behavior I knew was strictly forbidden. Melissa made a choked sound as Butterscotch stretched luxuriously on the back of her designer couch, his claws kneading the fabric ever so slightly. "But the furniture," she said weakly. "The photos, the plants. Just a few homey touches," I explained. "Oh, And wait until you see the beautiful flower garden Tyler planted along the front walkway. The perennials will bloom all summer. Daniel set down his bags, his expression shifting from shock to anger. Mom, you had no right to rearrange our house or change our yard. I met his gaze steadily. And you had no right to trick me into pet sitting under the guise of a family weekend. The directness of my response seemed to take him aback. Emma tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, why are you mad at Grandma? Look, Daisy can high-five now. The golden retriever promptly demonstrated her new trick, earning a treat from the jar I'd placed on the coffee table, formerly a forbidden zone for pet treats. Melissa was now moving through the house, discovering each change with increasing distress. The dining room. You used my grandmother's china, and the plants, they're everywhere. And what is that smell? Homemade dog treats, I explained. Much healthier than store-bought. The recipe calls for liver and fish oil, very nutritious, though the aroma does linger. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he'd had since childhood when overwhelmed. Mom, this isn't funny. You can't just come into our house and change everything. Interesting, I said, my voice calm but firm. You seem to understand boundaries when they're yours being crossed, yet you thought nothing of lying to me, manipulating me into providing free pet care and posting on social media about how I needed something to keep me busy anyway. His face flushed at having his wife's words quoted back to him. You saw that. I did. Along with the posts about being finally free and having a vacation without responsibilities. Tell me, Daniel, when was the last time you asked about my life, my needs, my desires? When was the last time you called just to talk, not because you needed something? Frank quietly stood and gestured to the children. Emma, Jason, why don't we take the dogs out to see the new flowers in the front yard? I bet Atlas would love to show you his new ball-catching skills. The children eagerly followed Frank and the dogs outside, leaving me alone with Daniel and Melissa. In the sudden quiet, I could hear the wall clock ticking, the one I'd moved from the office to the living room, because I thought it looked better there. Daniel sank onto the couch, looking deflated. Mom, we should have been more upfront about the pet sitting. But this, he gestured around the room, this is excessive. Is it? I've been thinking about that. About what's excessive. Is it excessive to expect honesty from my son? Is it excessive to want to be treated as a person with my own life, rather than a convenient solution to your problems? Is it excessive to desire respect? Melissa crossed her arms defensively. We do respect you. I turned to her, raising an eyebrow. Do you? Posting that I needed something to keep me busy shows respect. Planning this deception for days shows respect. I shook my head. No, Melissa. You've tolerated me because I've been useful. That's not respect. Daniel's expression had shifted from anger to something more complicated, a mixture of embarrassment and dawning recognition. We didn't think of it that way. Exactly. You didn't think of me at all, I said, but without bitterness. I brought something for you. I retrieved the box containing Robert's watch from the guest room and handed it to Daniel. This was your father's. He wanted you to have it. He opened the box, his eyes widening at the sight of the vintage Omega. Dad's watch, I always admired this. It comes with a condition, I said. This watch is part of your legacy, and legacy comes with responsibility. I want you to respect me as I've respected you. I want to be part of this family, not just its unpaid help. Daniel looked up, tears forming in his eyes. Mom, I'm sorry. We should never have tricked you. It was wrong. Yes, it was, I agreed. But this isn't just about the pet sitting. It's about our relationship. I've allowed myself to be taken for granted, and that's partly my responsibility. I'm establishing boundaries now, and I expect you to respect them. Melissa had been quiet, surveying the changes to her home with a tight expression. Now she spoke, her voice stiff, but not hostile. What exactly are these boundaries? Simple ones. Don't lie to me. Don't use me. Involve me in your lives because you want me there, not because I serve a purpose. Call occasionally just to talk. Visit sometimes without needing something. I moved to the new rocking chair, my throne of independence, and sat down. And in return, I'll respect your boundaries too. But first, you need to clearly establish what those are without manipulation or unspoken expectations. Frank and the children returned from outside, the dogs bounding in with them. The energy shifted, becoming lighter despite the lingering tension. "Daddy Grandma taught Daisy to give high fives," Jason exclaimed, "and Mr. Frank knows magic tricks." Daniel managed a small smile at his son's excitement. He looked at the watch in his hand, then back at me. "We have a lot to talk about, don't we?" "We do," I agreed. "But right now, I think Frank and I have lunch reservations. I'll let you all get settled back in and deal with your jet lag. Perhaps we can have dinner later this week, a proper family dinner." Frank offered me his arm with old-fashioned courtesy. "Shall we?" As we prepared to leave, Daniel stepped forward. "Mom, wait. I am sorry. Really. We should never have done this to you." "I know, honey," I said, patting his cheek. "And your apology means a lot to me. We'll talk more later. Right now, I have a lunch date." As Frank and I walked to his car, he gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "You were magnificent in there." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. It felt good to finally speak my truth. "So about that dinner I mentioned," he began. "I'm looking forward to it," I replied. "But first lunch. I find I'm suddenly very hungry." As we drove away, I looked back at the house with its newly planted flower garden. Change was blooming everywhere, it seemed. The weeks that followed marked a genuine transformation in my relationship with Daniel and his family, a different kind of transformation than the one I'd orchestrated in their home. True reconciliation takes time, and we were just beginning the process, but the initial signs were encouraging. 3 days after their return, Daniel called not to ask for anything, but just to talk. The conversation was a bit awkward at first, years of surface-level interaction, making deeper connection challenging. But as we pushed through the initial discomfort, something shifted. He asked about my book club, about my volunteer work. He shared his own struggles at work, his concerns about Emma's adjustment to second grade. It wasn't a perfect conversation, but it was real, and that meant everything. Melissa sent a handwritten note, something I wouldn't have expected from her. "I'm sorry for taking you for granted, and for the hurtful social media posts. I never considered how our actions would make you feel, and that was thoughtless and unkind. I hope you'll give us the chance to do better." The note wasn't gushing or overly emotional, but it felt sincere. Coming from Melissa, who'd always maintained a polished veneer of perfection, the acknowledgement of wrongdoing represented a significant step. A week later, they invited me to Sunday dinner, a proper invitation made days in advance with no hidden agenda. I accepted, bringing nothing but a bottle of wine and my company. The house had mostly returned to its previous state, though I noticed they'd kept a few of my changes. Some of the plants remained, and the photos were more diverse now, including some of the less perfectly posed family moments. Most tellingly, the animals greeted me with enthusiasm, and I observed that some of my adjustments to their routines had been maintained. Atlas was allowed on the sectional, though only on a designated blanket. Daisy performed her high-five trick for a treat. Melissa even mentioned that they'd kept the special homemade treat recipe, though with slightly less fish oil. My relationship with Frank blossomed alongside these family repairs. Our first dinner date led to a second, then a third. We discovered a shared love of live jazz antique bookstores and early morning walks. At 65 and 62, neither of us rushed into romance, but there was no denying the connection between us. Frank was thoughtful and intellectually engaging with a dry wit that often left me laughing until my sides ached. More importantly, he valued me for myself, not for what I could do for him, but simply for who I was. When Daniel noticed this new relationship developing, he seemed genuinely happy for me. "Frank seems like a good guy, Mom," he commented after meeting him properly at a family dinner. "He looks at you the way Dad used to." That observation brought tears to my eyes. Robert had been gone for 10 years, and while I would always love him, Frank's presence in my life felt right, not a replacement, but a new chapter. As summer progressed, my relationship with Emma and Jason deepened as well. Without the strain of trying to earn their parents' approval, I could simply enjoy being their grandmother. We established a regular grandma day twice a month, where they would spend the day with me baking cookies, visiting museums, or simply reading together. The flower garden Tyler had planted bloomed gloriously, transforming the front of Daniel and Melissa's house with color and life. When neighbors complimented it, Melissa surprisingly gave me credit. "My mother-in-law has a wonderful eye for beauty," she told them. "She's helped us make this house more of a home." Perhaps the most profound change was within me. For years, I defined myself primarily as Daniel's mother, measuring my worth by his approval or need for me. Now I was reclaiming my identity as Regina, a woman with her own interests, desires, and boundaries. I continued my volunteer work, my book club, my gardening, but I also explored new activities, often with Frank by my side. One evening, as Frank and I sat on his patio watching the sunset, he asked what I had learned from the whole experience. "I learned that love without boundaries isn't really love at all," I replied after a moment's thought. "It's dependency or obligation. Real love requires respect, and respect requires seeing the other person as fully human with their own needs and desires." "And what about us?" he asked, taking my hand. "Where do you see this going?" I smiled, watching the sky turn from orange to purple to deepening blue. "I think we're writing our own story, Frank. Not as supporting characters in someone else's narrative, but as the protagonists of our own." He nodded, understanding perfectly, as he often did. "I like our story so far." "So do I." I agreed, leaning my head against his shoulder. "So do I." In the months since that disastrous family weekend that turned into a pet sitting assignment, I've learned that it's never too late to establish boundaries, to demand respect, to insist on being seen. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to say no, or "not like this." I've learned that I am not just a mother, or a grandmother, or a widow. I am Regina Reynolds, a woman of value and substance, worthy of consideration and respect. And in that knowledge, I've found a freedom more profound than any beach vacation could provide. If you've ever felt taken for granted or invisible in your own family, know that it's never too late to change the dynamic. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for healthy relationships. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with loved ones? Share your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my experience, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening, and remember, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. Honor it accordingly.